Hello and welcome to the Calling the Real You podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Horton, and I call the real you out each and every week with special guests like the one that we have today. Today we are talking with Michael Jernegan, and we're going to be discussing astrology, what it is, what it isn't, and how working with an astrologer can help with all areas of your life. Now, this might be a little bit, we've been on a program or a course of talking a lot about business lately. A lot of the guests that I've been introducing to you all have been very successful business women, businessmen, talked a lot about branding and marketing, talked a lot about being centered and knowing the real you. That's, of course, the crux of the entire show. But I wanted to bring Michael on for a number of reasons. Number one, he actually did a reading for me a couple of weeks back, and it literally blew my socks off. I'm so super excited for this upcoming year, the year 2017. I cannot wait to see what he was sharing with me as a result of the planets aligning up and my birthday, etc., how they unfold. I'm super excited, and I wanted to bring that experience to you because whether you are experiencing a time of struggle or a time of abundance and success, it's really helpful to have as many tools as possible to be able to access them to help you along your way. And I don't know if you're familiar with this quote by J.P. Morgan. Millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do. And that's why I also wanted to bring Michael on too, because if you begin to work with an astrologer like Michael, he was so incredible, so heartwarming, so accurate with a lot of the things from what had occurred in my recent past. There's nothing like having someone like Michael with his skill set in your back pocket to be able to share with you what is around the corner, what can happen, providing or depending upon what our mindset is, etc. And so world leaders, supremely successful people consult and seek counsel with astrologers really all of the time over the centuries, and to help them navigate the waters of their business, their relationships, health, and life in general. And without further ado, Michael, welcome to the Calling the Real You podcast.
Hello, Pamela.
Thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted to join you today and to our listeners.
Thank you. Michael, if I could just say one thing about you or what your feeling is, and I would love for you to go into it deeper, obviously, for our audience. But to you, an astrological chart is a map of the heavens at the time and place of your birth. And you believe that anyone born at a given moment is reflective of that moment.
Yes.
And so when you look at that position of the planets when people were born, you see this as the seed for potential that was planted at birth. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, when I first had an astrological reading done for myself, almost 40 years ago now, I was fascinated by the comprehensive accuracy of the understanding of my personality and my potential. And so since then, I've been studying this subject and have found that in looking at a birth chart, and I do believe that there is this reflection of this sort of the seed for potential that was planted at birth, and I see this as people's original choice upon entering this world, that an astrological chart can actually help us with this knowledge and this understanding, and therefore gifting us with the ability to make better life choices. So that in helping people get onto their correct karmic path that their soul has chosen to follow in this lifetime, and to always be aware of the potential roadblocks that are there and what we can learn from them and move beyond them. But sometimes I say to people, this is about finding the best ways to be you at your best possible expression. And so this is one of my goals in using planetary information to help people find that higher expression for themselves in their careers, in their personal life, in their health, and their spiritual wellness and being. And so that's my focus about doing this work.
When you first started, you said that you received the reading almost 40 years ago. What led you to that point? How did you even learn about that was an option?
I'd always been interested in symbolism and the symbols of the planets and the signs, and then cross paths with someone who was basically a student of astrology at that time, and she offered me a reading, and she said, just let me take a look at your chart and tell you what I see. And I was fascinated that for me, she was telling me things that I thought only I knew. And so it's sort of like an opening door when you recognize that here's this person who actually, in fact, does not know you, but they know and they see who you are, who you can be, what your potential is. And so from that point, I then decided to study this more. And through reading books and through learning from other astrologers, in many ways I was self-taught. And some of my best education on this subject has been through the readings that I've been giving people for decades. That's where I learned so much in observance and just watching how these planets affect people. And obviously you can watch the world, you can watch politics, and certainly famous people, from politicians to celebrities. You get to sort of watch how they are out in the world, and you can see even within their charts. And I know that when I have taught seminars about astrology, what I've said to all of my students is gather up the charts of your friends and your family because you can observe them, but also take a look at some of these famous, well-known people, whoever they may be for you, whether they're writers or actors or political people. Or what you'll find is, and then looking at them, you can observe how the effects of some of these planets are manifesting through them in the world. And so that's how I studied and learned, and I found myself sort of going deeper and deeper into this study. As I said to all of my students too, the more that you uncover, the more you're going to find. There's just so much to this subject and the understanding of it. And we are in such a historical, intense, and somewhat chaotic time of planetary collision that I think it's very helpful for people to understand how that history is manifesting in their chart and in their world. And so specifically for the last couple of months, I have been finding that I've been talking to a lot of people about their concerns about the world, but about their place in the world and about how they can navigate this time period. And astrological information is, to me, it's this wonderful roadmap, and it's this guiding force that can help you navigate these times in the best possible way.
That's wonderful. Um, if you could take a moment, so I know we're talking about planets and people have a
Yes.
loose understanding of what astrology is. I still don't even fully comprehend, other than that it's the study of the planets and how it relates to your birth. Please share with us, kind of like in a nutshell, exactly what it is.
Okay, great question. Because what astrology actually is, to me, it's a language, it's an art, it's a science, and it studies the relationship between the cycles of the planets and the activities of people on the Earth plane. So, in looking at an individual chart, you find on that day of a person's birth and the exact time and place, which includes the latitude and longitude, where all the planets in the solar system were placed, from the Sun, Mercury, Venus, the Moon, all the way out to Pluto. And yes, we astrologers still include Pluto in the process, even though some European astronomers said it was a dwarf and we're kicking it out of the solar system. But so, we find out where those planetary energies are, how they interact with each other. And to me, right there, that is that seed for potential. That is that roadmap that was mapped out for someone's life journey. And I've even been finding lately so many friends and clients are becoming grandparents. And so they'll have me take a look at their grandchild's chart. And, I said, this is, whether I was looking at this chart from someone who was 1 week old or 50 years old, I would say the same thing about this person and what all that potential is in their chart, and what their emotional life is like, and what their health is like, and what type of relationships that they will succeed in, and careers, and there's so much to be gained from that in helping to map out this life map to work through. And so to me, that's what astrology basically is. It's sort of just looking at the mathematical position of the placement of the planets as they are at that moment of birth, and then correlating that to this language that studies the relationship. And interestingly enough, the word astrology itself was derived from two Greek words. One was astro, which means star, and the other one is logo, which means word or speech. So I sometimes say to people, to me, it literally means star talk. And so in talking to people about astrology, we are talking about the position of these planets, these stars in the celestial orbit to our planet, and therefore how they relate to us as individuals.
Mm. And that for those of you who this might not be a something that is appealing to you, or that you've what's the word? It could be taboo to you, or what have you. If you think about when people talk about a full moon, and Michael, please correct me on this. Again, I have zero knowledge on astrology, but I'm going to try to put the bridge here.
Okay.
So if we are following the moon cycles, and we know that the theory or the statements around a full moon that people seem to lose their mind or go a little crazy, or that the moon itself actually controls the tides of the sea, and we are 98% water, whatever that percentage is water,
right.
It has an effect on us. Could you
right.
talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's actually what you just said are some of the things that I actually say to people, is that the moon does affect the tides, and therefore, when there is a full moon, for us as individuals, it's like having a high tide in our body, so that all our feelings and our emotions and our intuitions run very strongly. And that, my partner and actually my sister are both nurses, and what I always found out from them was that anytime there was a full moon, what would happen within a hospital setting with patients, and that people bled more, that people emotional reactions were stronger. And so, to me, that was one of those indicators of what a full moon can actually do. And actually, we do have a full moon this week on Friday. And so, yes, we often hear, that word attached to the moon, the lunar, that people act like lunatics during this time period. But I've always perceived a full moon as one of those times when a person's intuition is at a peak, that this is when they can tap into that higher information, that what I sometimes call that higher frequency radio channel that people can tune into and gather this extra knowledge and information. And so, and therefore then, as the moon and its field of energy affects our planet, so does the sun. And the sun in astrology is basically the basic core self. And this is how most people know astrology. They know their sun sign. And that then if you look at Mercury and Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and all the other planets, that the effects of their energy fields are also affecting our Earth, and therefore those of us who are on the Earth. And that this is then how we map out how these energetic patterns can steer the course of events for the world and for individuals. Did that make sense?
Absolutely, it did. Yeah.
Good.
And before we talk about what astrology isn't, because I think that's also important to cover.
Yes.
Even though there's this roadmap and the tool of astrology, and people can consult with professionals such as yourself, Michael, that doesn't mean that things are set in stone, correct? Because we still have our free will, and we still are able to make our choices. Can you talk to that about
Yes,
about that?
yes. Great question. And what I often say to people is that astrology is not destiny, because I do not believe that we can predict a free will. And just as when we're traveling down the road, or for some people, if they're listening to GPS, you are given certain directions on maybe the best path to go. That doesn't mean necessarily you're always going to choose it. You always have free will. But that my perception is that in understanding that astrology offers you knowledge of opportunities and knowledge of when there may be some yellow or red lights on that highway that you're on to be aware of. And so it can help protect you. It can help bring you to that place where, all right, is a time period where there are green lights, and that the energies and the influences are allowing you a better opportunity, sort of a cosmic assistance to accomplish things. And so, that's always my perception. But yes, I always tell people, I said that, what I say is the interpretation of one person, and that is coming through my filter, my understanding of this knowledge. And that it is then important for each of us as individuals, when we gather that knowledge, to then use that in the way that we see best. That it is not some, as you say, set in stone destiny that we have to fulfill. It's not a script of life that is thrust upon you that you have to perform. It is this map, and like any map, we use it as a guidance to get where we're going in the best way, the best and the safest possible way, is what I often say to people, is you just get there safely and successfully. And so that, I think it's always important when I say to people, when talking about astrology, and I'll give a very quick example, is that one of the things that I do is relationship charts. Because of all the decades that I have been doing readings, the number one question is relationship. Number two question is career, but number one is relationship. And there's something you can do in astrology where, yes, you can compare two individual charts to see how people relate, but then you can also do a mathematical joining of two charts into one chart, which shows what happens when those two people come together willingly and freely to relate. And years ago, I did one of these readings for someone here in person in Seattle, and saw all kinds of information that I thought was, this is a very powerful soul and karmic connection. What that person failed to tell me was that that other person had a restraining order against him. So, so I joke with people sometimes, say, well, but then there are practical things in the world. I mean, I can see all this potential here, but it still then requires two people to come together freely and willingly to relate. And that just because there is this chart does not indicate that a relationship will happen or that it can happen. It shows what could happen if it comes together.
We're going to talk about the other services that you provide too
Okay.
in a moment, because I really find it fascinating, particularly one of them, but I'm not going to mention it just yet. In a moment, we'll get there. So what isn't astrology?
It isn't destiny. I mean, I don't believe that it is something that it's not a group of rules that have to be followed. It's all, to me, it's about understanding. And that when we have understanding, then we have the ability to make better life choices. But it's not something that has to be followed without any questioning on oneself. I mean, I often tell people, don't necessarily use this as looking up every single day what every single planet is doing to you on that day. You'll get sort of tangled up in the details of that, and then you're not actually living your life. I again sort of say it's not that something that is a definitive piece of information. It is something that is always clearly open to interpretation.
Beautiful. do you ever speak to the retrograde, like Mercury retrograde?
That's one of the times when I get the most calls from friends and clients, and that when any planet is retrograde, what that actually means is that in relationship to the sun's orbit, that the planet is moving backwards. It's not physically going backwards in the sky. It's just within that relationship to the sun, it is seen to have slowed down, and that what you find then happens is that some of the events that are affected by that planet then may slow down or stall in your life. And one of the most common ones that people talk about is Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is the planetary energy that affects our daily communications, our daily movements. It affects machines and mails and conversations. And so every time there is a Mercury retrograde, voicemails and emails are full for me of people saying, my computer broke down, my car broke down, I'm going crazy, it must be retrograde. And then I always explain to people that there's a way to use this to your advantage, that a retrograde time period is not trying to needlessly disrupt your life. It is trying to help you slow down the pace, reflect, rethink, gather information, not the best time to finalize or act upon decisions. And yet, as I often tell people, Pam, that life doesn't stop during retrograde. It's still moving forward, but you can understand that this is not the best time to buy a car. It's not the best time to buy a new computer. And many people come to me when they are choosing dates for travel or choosing dates for surgery. And I often say, not the best time for those activities. But if you are going to do them, then be aware of what may occur from the retrograde effect of that planetary energy. I mean, I know people who have had surgery during retrograde and then they've had to redo it. And so I always say to people, the word retrograde begins with two letters, R-E. So it's a redo, it's a rethink, it's a reflect, it's a reconsider. And it's even a rest and relax, and is trying to help you sort of slow down the pace a bit. And I am one of those people that believe that the world has come to a place of almost an epidemic of distraction, and that it's important for us when we can have that quiet time to actually slow down a little bit and catch up with ourselves. And a retrograde can offer that opportunity.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. When is the next
Okay.
Mercury retrograde?
The next Mercury retrograde starts on April 9th,
Okay.
and it runs through May 3rd. And that one in particular, for some people, it's going to affect finances. And I certainly tell people, do not file your taxes during retrograde, because I know too many people who have done it and they end up making some sort of error and they get audited or something else happens. But I said it's important. You can do yourself a favor by getting them done in March and not waiting till April.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So everyone
Yes.
who's
Yes.
listening, between April 9th and May 3rd, invite yourselves, give yourselves permission to slow down, rethink, rest, redo, just kind of go within and don't fight Mercury retrograde. Just
Yes.
let it happen and be a witness to it.
Right.
And don't file your taxes during that time.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Michael, you offer a variety of services, and one of them I'm going to point out, and then I invite you to share the rest of them as to what the work it is that you do and can do with people and for people. But I find this one particularly quite interesting, and I might offline have you work that out with me, which is the best location. Like,
Yes.
you work with location maps to help people find the best places in the world to manifest their absolute potential. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I'm fascinated by this part of the astrological study. And in fact, what this is, it's taking your astrological birth chart and placing it over the map of the world. And so therefore, the different planetary lines affect different latitudes and longitudes. And so therefore, in the entire world, everybody has the best place for career, the best place for relationship or marriage, the best place to live. And conversely, there are also some of the difficult places or the lesson places or even dangerous places for people to go. And recently I've been working more and more with people about these maps. There was one client who's also a good friend who wanted to do traveling to different animal sanctuaries to do healing work with animals. And so we took a detailed look at how her map was affecting those energies in India and Africa and other places where these animal sanctuaries existed. And so we sort of located and found the best places for that. I also recently worked with a family of 4 who are trying to figure out where to live. And, the parents had a tremendous sort of question about, where to best take their children for the best schools. And so I've also helped teenagers who are looking at college sort of find that these are the different experiences you could have if you go to this university. But this particular family of 4, they also want to know about where's a place where all 4 of them are going to resonate the best as a family unit and all of them thrive. And so they gave me a list of different cities and states and places that they were considering. And I found some that for some of them, there were some challenges or difficulties, but I found a couple of places where all of them were resonating better. So they're now looking at exploring, moving to some of those places. So these maps to me are fascinating in that they can tell you and give you a sense. And again, it's not destiny so much as what your life can be like in different geographical locations. These maps don't tell you about the economy of the area. They don't tell you about the weather or if there's war in these areas. It talks about specifically what your experience is like in those locations. And so, I refer to this often when I'm working with clients as let's take a tour of the world and let's find out some of those places, particularly when people say to me, I want to move, where should I go? And I often begin by saying, what have you dreamt about? Where have you thought about? Where would you like to look at? And then we look at that, and sometimes I'll give them places that are a surprise that they never considered. But these maps, again, offer this amazing amount of knowledge and understanding about how our life can evolve in different latitudes and longitudes in these geographical locations and how that affects our ability to succeed personally, career-wise, health-wise, and all those other parts of our life. And so it's something that I'm finding I'm using more and more in readings, and that I think particularly as people become part of this larger global world and the global economy, that it's become more and more relevant to people about not just moving, but traveling to certain places. And so these maps offer an amazing blueprint of information for that.
That's so awesome. I really, that fascinates me because we have a lot of friends and colleagues that, yes, do work for corporations, but we also have a great deal of professionals and friends, again, and colleagues that are solopreneurs or entrepreneurs that literally can work anywhere in the world and live anywhere in the world and work. And so I know that population is on the rise. And so this is a beautiful fit for that. And you're a great resource to them for regarding as to where to anchor down for a little while.
Yes. Yes.
So Michael, I can't believe that our half hour is up already. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And before we all go, thank you all for joining us today and listening in. Michael, as we mentioned earlier, he gives readings that include information as it relates to your highest potential in your career, your relationships, your health and creative expression, and even your spiritual growth, or should I say most especially your spiritual growth, in my humble opinion. So I highly recommend you seek out Michael, even if it's just for fun, right? Even if you just have this curiosity as to what it feels like or what it looks like, touches, feels like, etc., to have your astrological report reading done. Michael, how is it that people can find you?
Best way to contact me is through my email address, which is Michael Astrologer. That's MICHAEL ASTROLOGER ROLOGER at Comcast.net. COMCAST.net. And they can contact me and I can tell them about the different variety of services that I offer. I do phone readings and can then send those voice readings via email or put them on a CD and mail them to them.
And Michael's very quick with that. Literally within hours, it was turned around.
Yes.
So I appreciated that too very much. Michael, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for joining us as a guest on Calling the Real You podcast. And wow, the time flies by so fast when we do these because we're having such a good time, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you for having me on the show, and I so appreciate the ability to be able to talk to people about what I do, and I look forward to hearing from anybody who has heard this and is interested in learning more about their lives.
Wonderful. And with your permission, I'd love to have you back. Maybe as things take place in our world, we could do some sort of a feature where you can do the reading as to that event and the why behind it, and to provide whether celebrate with us or help provide consolation for us.
Absolutely, I would be delighted to do that.
Excellent, thank you. So everyone, listen, I hope you all found today's episode helpful and enjoyable. And again, thank you so much for joining us. I know our time is very precious and extremely valuable. You can certainly find me on Facebook, Pamela with 2 L's, Horton, and also callingtherealYOU.com or Calling the Real You Facebook page as well. Please join our community. I wish to thank my husband, Eric Horton, who is my best friend, my business partner, and I say this every time because it is the absolute truth. If it wasn't for him, it wouldn't be as easy as it is for me to do the work that I love. So I'm very grateful for him, along with Sacred Stories, which is where Calling the Real You Real You podcast is aired from. Thank you to our sponsors, Lux Salon and Spa, Yola Portraits, Karen D. Felice Designs, and of course the transformational music by my friend Jim Oliver. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everyone. And remember, call the real you out.